Okay, so I agree when everyone has an opinion. I'm into FMV games while other people aren't. I can accept that. But what I can't accept is that some people's opinions are really unfair, and in the case of the flood of reviewers spawned by critics who review bad games mostly for comedy, with some who are actually good at that. But I would mainly blame the fans of these critics for taking their reviews too seriously. This is what happened to two of my favourite shoot 'em ups, Microcosm and Novastorm, both by Psygnosis. Psygnosis, for people who don't know, was a great gaming company from here, in Britain. They are famous for being the publishers of the original Lemmings on the Amiga and making other great titles like Wipeout and Colony Wars before merging with Sony to become SCE Liverpool. Microcosm was first released in 1993 for the FM-10s before later being released onto the DOS computer, the 3DO, and the Sega Mega CD, which is the one I'm reviewing. Now, people who talk about this game says it's dull and boring, but I don't see what's dull about it. The only exception, though, is the intro, because I agree with Spoonie that the intro is silent most of the time and is very long-winded, but I don't know why the plot doesn't make any sense to him. Let me explain the story. On the planet of Bodor, there's a war between two corporations, Axiom and Cybertech. The Cybertech president is in a coma, and the Axiom rebels, including a scientist, inject him with some microscopic beams that go into his veins that control the president's mind. This leads to a special mission where the main character has to go into the vein and through his body in order to destroy the beings. Now, how is that complicated of a plot? Now, the gameplay is your basic shoot 'em up, except it has a third-person angle that faces directly behind the ship. I can understand why this is a problem to some people, but it wasn't really a problem for me. The ship isn't that large, and you shouldn't stand still in the first place anyway. I also like the difficulty curve on this game, as I prefer a challenge which doesn't seem to be found on modern titles. The game was meant to be visually impressive, while the opening is usually black and red. The sprite design of the ship, as well as the menu, are kinda dull. I do agree that the stages and the enemies are really colourful and well designed for the time, even if the Mega CD had limitations. The music isn't that bad, which is expected from rockstar Rick Wakeman, but the Mega CD soundtrack won't have any memorable tracks. Okay, the reason why I'm having a difficult time reviewing this game now is because despite the opinion that I like this game, it is very difficult to show why. However, it would be way easier to explain if I had a hold of the best version of Microcosm, the Amiga CD32. This version is way better in every way possible, and I'm not the only person that thinks that. The music, composed by both Rick Wakeman and Kevin Collier, has an awesome upbeat techno track. The visuals are way smoother and colourful, and with the dark sections adding atmosphere. Sadly though, it isn't recognised today as it was back then. But why? Well, other than the DOS version, the game was released on flop consoles, the 3DO, the Mega CD, and the CD32. Despite not all of them being terrible consoles, I mean the Amiga CD32, which had the best version, only lasted 5 months because of legal issues that caused Commodore to become bankrupt. Why isn't it recognised today? Like I said earlier, because people now think it was a bad example of the game for a system it was released on, especially the Mega CD, as well as reviewers that I won't go into. Psygnosis followed up with another shooter, Novastorm. I have the DOS version here, but like Microcosm, it was also released on the Mega CD and the 3DO. However, there was also a PlayStation version, but out of all those, the DOS version is clearly the best. Psygnosis took everything that was great about Microcosm and made it better, and he improved what was bad. The first improvement is the intro.
Centuries ago, our forefathers left Earth in search of a new paradise. With them, they took the ecosystem of our world. Frozen on board the giant arks, artificial intelligence guided our ships through the void, while the pioneers slept and dreamt of a new beginning. The machines maintained and monitored every aspect of our existence. They began to evolve. Forming their own consciousness and self-awareness, but warped by their history of servitude. We were no longer masters of what we had created, but its slaves. Scarabäcs took control of our system, building huge war machines to enforce its rule. Orbital habitats were destroyed, populations wiped out. Briefed the Scavenger Force Squadron on their mission.
Mankind's last hope lies on the experimental Scavenger 4 Fighter Squadron and Operation Novastorm. As commander, you will lead the strike team and launch a decisive blow against the Scarab forces. We have identified several weak links in the enemy chain of command. Each one will have to be eliminated if we are to have a hope of defeating Scarabets. Target number 1 is the atmospheric sentinel hovering over Palanor. Details have been fed into your navcom.
This mission is of utmost importance, Scavenger 4. Failure means the destruction of civilization. Good luck.
The next one is the soundtrack, which I have no idea why there is a soundtrack disc for it. The bosses are even more creative and futuristic, and the environments are fully interactive, which is very impressive for a full-motion video game. Something I forgot. Novastorm was actually a port of an FM Towns game called Scavenger 4, which is odd because I haven't found any information about the previous 3 Scavenger games. If you think I'll say this, I apologise in advance. The explanation is that Microcosm and Novastorm were part of a trilogy, with the third game being Megamorph. I would call it an FM Towns trilogy because all 3 games were released on the Japanese-only computer, and because the Commodore's bankruptcy, Megamorph was only released on the FM Towns. Still doesn't explain why Novastorm was Scavenger 4 and not just Scavenger. Anyway, I can't really explain much more about this game because most of the other things that make this game great I've mentioned in Microcosm. Awesome music, greatly detailed graphics, challenging gameplay. It has a new power-up system which is quite unique, where you have to collect medals by shooting down rows of enemies in order to obtain better weaponry, which is quite helpful, and also requires you to not just fly around and not shoot anything. But what else?
Available.
I would like to say the Mega CD version isn't the greatest version, but because I don't have it yet, I can't say if it's terrible. But for visuals and for some reason sound, it is a downgrade over the DOS version, as this comparison I did shows you.